Okay. To be frank, I'm not very optimistic about finishing the first mitzvah. If I do it, I'll be pleasantly surprised. I'm not sure to get to the second mitzvah I want to do tonight. Frankly, I have an agenda. The agenda is that a lot of Torah has been said about ואהבת לרעך כמוך, and maybe it's very noble. People are trying to get people involved and to like each other. Okay, I'm not denying noble motives, but my agenda is to try to understand the Rambam from the Rambam's point of view, and to be very honest to what I know, what I don't know, and what I know is true, and certainly what I know is not true. Okay, so let's just try to do something. Yeah, okay. The first point over here, okay, is that okay. Now the Arabic word is the makor is mahba, which actually is love. Okay, and the mashmos is love in the way we understand love. It's an emotional feeling for another person or another thing, whatever you're loving. Okay, and the Ram uses this word 3 times in this mitzvah. Okay, now it says shetivonu lahov kitzosenu es kitzosenu, or zeh es zeh, kemo shenahov atzmenu. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is the Rambam uses the Arabic equivalent to emotional love in Reish Vav in this mitzvah. However, when you go back to the 9th church, where he's talking about ואהבת לרעך כמוך, at the beginning, when he talks about there are 4 different categories of mitzvahs, he says, this is what Kapach will see that other translations not clear that this is the best here. He says, V'chein mitzvah oisonu lehisnaig b'midos musiyamos kimoi ma shenitztavinu b'chaninu b'rachmonus u'b'chemlo u'b'ahavo. This is not good, and the translation is not good, because the word b'ahavo over here is not this machbo, but it's al tudad or something like that. And I want to talk about this and explain this. And this is very important. Okay? So he says it's a midah, misuyemes, mash nitzavinu b'chanino, u'b'achmonus, u'b'chemlo, and he says ba'avo. Okay? Now, here, al tedad, the literal translation is not ahavo, but it's yedidus. Okay, this is Professor Langerman pointed this out to me, and also he told me when the Ram uses the word midis over here in Sherish Tes, he's referring to tchunas hanefesh, character traits, and at least in the from the philosophical background, the Greek philosophical background, Yedidus is a character trait. Okay. So, and I guess Yedidus is a character trait. Ahava, the truth is, forget about anything. If you talk about Midas, you translate as Midas or Tchunas and Nefesh, what does Ava have to do with Midas? And the answer is absolutely nothing. So then you have to ask yourself another question. What does the Rambam want? He says when he cans the mitzvah over here, that the mitzvah is emotional love. And then when he categorizes the mitzvahs, in the beginning of Shiur's Chi, he categorizes as a character trait. And it's very unclear how all this happens, okay? So the point is to try to understand this and move on. But this just the basic, the first thing you have to do is translate it properly. And I think using Kapach's translation, it's going to put you a step backwards, not a step forward, because here he's talking about character traits, and Ava certainly is not a character trait. Well, even if you're talking about Midah, it's not a Midah. Okay. I'll give you another example, and then we'll try to understand what's going on. You go back to Mitzvah Gimel, Mitzvah say Gimel. Okay. Now, you see, in Mitzvah say Gimel is also machbasa. They were referring to who shitzivonu shenitztavinu avoso yisale. So it means an emotional attachment to God. Okay. Interesting. The Rambam shares Chi. Let's get back to that again. When he's talking about Ahab, he says like this: Dea minadeos, Leos bedas halashkofa musayemis, gon shnavinu ledas hashkofas hayichud, whatever that means, we'll see. V'after, okay, v'after, no, hashkofas hayichud, v'avas Hashem yisale, v'yiroseh. She says, Avo and Yira are a dea. Okay. Maybe it's a dea, or maybe it's a belief. We have to see, exactly what we're talking about here. Okay. Because the, so what's the Ram doing? He cans the mitzvah in both Ahavas Hashem as machba, but in fact, there he goes on and he says, V'nistakel b'mitzvoisov, v'tzivuyo puloisov, k'dei shenasigehu, v'nisaneg b'hasogosoi tachlis ha'oineg. V'zoi tachlis ha'avo ha'metzuva. So, what exactly happens over here? So let me continue again. Hine bi'alti l'cho ki b'hizboinenus tusag l'cho hasoga. By thinking about it or getting these days, you'll have the hasoga, v'yimsa tainug, v'oz tihye a'avo behechrach. V'oz tihye or a'avo behechrach. Ba'avo is al machbo. Okay? So, what Professor Langerman suggested to me is that the discussion over here ensures chi about the 4 types of mitzvahs is not a discussion of what the mitzvah is, but the various utensils or medium that one can be mekayim the mitzvah to help one to mekayim the mitzvah. So the avo that you're talking about, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's an emotional avo, but it's not popular. And the Ram would be of the opinion that someone has emotional attachment to God, not based on any understanding. That's not the mitzvah Avas Hashem. Avas Hashem, the only way, behechach bo'avo, the only way that it can happen is through the daya and his blindness of understanding HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Similarly, the mitzvah of ואהבת לרעך כמוך, the mitzvah is the emotional attachment that you have to people. But the only way that a person can have an emotional attachment to a person who he has no idea who he is, he's never met him, he has no contact with him, is through working on the character traits of Chanino and Rachmonus, as the Ram says, Bechemlo, Rachmonus, probably Bechanino, Rachmonus, Ubechemlo, Ubeyedidus, working on this character trait called Yedidus, friendship. You can develop a character, you can develop a love of someone who you have no attachment to. And that's what's happening over here. These various, the mitzvah is through both the mitzvah of Avas Hashem and ואהבת לרעך כמוך is an emotional attachment, is an emotional feeling. But it has to be developed in the mitzvah of Avas Hashem through deis and through in the mitzvah of ואהבת לרעך כמוך through character traits. Here, I assume what the Rambam is because he uses 2 words here in this mitzvah. We'll see he uses chemla and ahavo. So we have to understand he has a broader understanding of ahavo. See, chemla can be an expression of ahavo, I assume. See, when you talk about the Rebbeinu Shalom and Avas Hashem, you can't, the discussion of Chemla doesn't mean anything. But I assume the Rambam felt that ואהבת לרעך כמוך, Chemla can be an expression of Avo. So it's a very strange thing. The Ram uses chemla as a character trait and shows chi, and also uses it when he's talking about the mitzvah here. It's very odd. But yedidus is not ava, it's friendship, okay? And you use friendship to develop this type of ava. That l'chayr is what's going on. So I assume maybe I'm wrong, okay? I assume that yedidus means a certain empathy. And building on this empathy, I develop the ahava ve'ahavta lira'cha kemוך. Maybe that's wrong, but that's the way I see it. Okay, now here we'll come back to this later. The Rambam develops something, ואהבת לרעך כמוך, and the Rambam takes it somewhat literally because he says, כמו שנאהב עצמנו. Okay. And Rav Sadigan also does the same type of thing in his Sefer HaMitzvos, which is recently published. Perek Yud Gimel, page 96. Perek Yud Gimel, Chovas Yehudi Klapa Yehudi, V'chulei Horishono Sheyahavenu K'fi Shu'ev Es Atzmo. Ka'omrei V'ahavta lira'cha kemוך. This will be, we'll pick this up. This will be important later. And we will see, contrast to the Ramban, and we see the Rambam here struggling with it. What does it mean to love your fellow man as you love yourself? We'll see. Then, Ushetiye chemlosi v'ahavosi li'ochi kechemlosi v'ahavosi li'atzmi b'mamoinoi v'gufa. This line we have to understand, and we'll get to it soon. This line is a very difficult line. It requires a lot of work. But I want to focus on something else, which the truth is, it first hit me today, and I was absolutely taken aback by it, okay? This word le'ochi, okay? Kapach has it le'ochi be'emuna or le'ochi bedas. It's one, a person of who has the same emuna postulates, or is part of, I see, I'm not sure, be'emuna or bedas. See, with emuna, you assume there's religious postulates, okay? Some belief system. When you talk about das, it could be of your religious persuasion, but not express any religiosity. So I'm not sure exactly what probably the Arabic has to be working on to understand exactly what we mean here. But I ask myself a question. Does it mean that a Baal Aveira, who, even if you accept Emunah, that he has religious postulates, but let's say he's Meshumid, the Teovoin or the Hachis, I don't know. Is there a mitzvah for Ahava? Ve'ahavta lira'cha kemוך, even before we begin to understand what it is, okay? So I'll tell you what got me started on this, okay? if you recall, we mentioned a few weeks ago, maybe it was last week, maybe it was before that, I don't remember. No, probably was back a little bit before, when we were talking about Prik and Te'ina, that the Torah talks about Soinacha, and the Gemara Psachim says on Kuf Yud Gimel that you saw the person being over Aveira, let's say B'Sina, and it starts off Rashoy L'Snoisai and even Mitzvah L'Snoisai. So I have a very simple question. Can you imagine that somebody who is Mitzvah L'Snoisai, there could be a mitzvah of ואהבת לרעך כמוך, or this is a stira, okay? Now I'm telling you, I think it's a very interesting discussion, okay? And then, if you assume that it's a stira, then the Ram's definition of ochi is not ochi be'emunah, ochi b'das is really insufficient, or it's not telling you, or maybe the rest of it is protei mitzvahs. The question is, my Jewish brother, who I saw doing an aveira, and is a mitzvah l'snoiser, is the mitzvah ואהבת לרעך כמוך, or not? So I thought this was a very interesting question. Or is the mitzvah ואהבת לרעך כמוך and the law of sisnes achicha b'levavecha basically the opposite? And there's an isa of sinah, and the mitzvah is not to be sinah, but to be oiv. Okay, that's the question on the table. So the problem is the Rambam. Let's see the start. Let's watch the Rambam with Sefer B'Shmiras HaNefesh. Let's read it again. I thought this is amazing. There are a lot of other things I want to talk about, but the question is Avo and Sinah, is the mitzvah ואהבת לרעך כמוך, and a person is a mitzvah to be saying to him? So I can imagine the Baalei Musa saying yes, but I'm not sure if I'd ask them to explain to what it means. What is the Avo? What's the Sinah? I'm not sure I'd be able to. Okay, but let's just see how it plays itself out. So the Rambam in Hilchos Sefer B'Shmiras HaNefesh, v'hechiyeh Yisrael soinem Yisrael, v'akosav oimer l'sisas achicha b'levavecha, omu chachamim gon shiro levadoi she'ov aveira v'hisra boi v'lechozer harizeh mitzvah l'sonah ad she'yaseh tshuva v'yachzor mirisha. So the Rambam till he does tshuva, there's a mitzvah of sinah. V'afal pi she'adayin lo yaseh tshuva im motzu niva b'maso mitzvah lifroi v'chulei. Because the Ram says that prikutina depends upon maminim nikri adas. But it could be a Rasha. But a Rasha is mitzvah l'soinah. But if he's mamim mitzvah bikri adas, shehem nilvim el Hashem, maminim bikri adas, shenemo emo aleim chayoni nu Hashem elokim im echbo it voice harosha ki b'shuva shuv rosha midako v'choy. Now, let's start slowly. I want to try to prove from Minyan HaMitzvos what the relationship be'ahava and sinah is. And this is very important. I think the diuk is correct. Let's look et lois aseh shin beis. He, she is hilnu, misnoi kitzosein lekitzoseinu. V'omroi leisisnes ochicha bobavecho. V'loshin sifro lo amalti elisina shehi believe. If it's publicly demonstrated or even privately, it's demonstrated, not left in his heart. And I say, I hate you. You don't violate the law of the I hate you. Okay, say that. So it's a question which law it is. Then he says, "V'oive al aseh gamkein v'omroi v'ahavta lorach kamocha." So he says that if I hate somebody, that is a stira to v'ahavta lorach kamocha. It's very clear. Okay, so I would tell you, loosely assumes in the Sefer HaMitzvos point of view that you can't imagine a mitzvah after kemוך if there's a mitzvah soiner, because a person who's soiner somebody else that only violates. The Ram seems to say that after kemוך and the sister are basically the mirror image of each other. That there's an Isa to be Soine and a mitzvah to be Oyev. And if there's a mitzvah to be Soine, l'chayra, I would say also there's an Isa to be Oyev, because a person who you're not allowed to be Soine, by being Soine him, you violate the Aftalach Kamocha. That's what I would assume. Maybe I'm wrong. But the Rambam saying that everyone who violates Leisistas Achira B'Avecha also violates the Aftalach Kamocha. So I would assume they're mirror image of each other. In Mishnah Torah, I can imagine, I have no proof, but I think I do. Why does the Torah have to go out of its way, according to the Rambam, in Priku Te'ina, that the Rambam cans it in Mishnah Torah, that there's a Sakonis Nefashos issue, and therefore, even though I'm Mitzuva, and I have to hate him, but I have to give up my hate because it's there's a Sakonis Nefashos issue over here, and I have to help him. Okay. So I would tell you, no. There might be a mitzvah to be Soine the guy, but there's the V'aftalach Kamocha. I want to do chesed. And in this situation, if the way we'll see later, the V'aftalach Kamocha is if I would be in the situation, it's what I want. If my donkey would, be roaming in the streets and with a tremendous burden on it, or I have to help somebody, but V'aftalach Kamocha would be bechayev this. Why does the Ram have to go to such great? If the mitzvah after Kamocha is still chal, when someone is Seine, so in this situation, I should help him. And you don't have to go out and say that Sakonis Nefashos and the Rebbeinu Shalom loves Jewish lives. So I would tell you, and maybe I'm wrong, that in a person where it's a mitzvah l'seina in a Russia, there's no mitzvah after Kamocha. Unless you tell me, I don't know, you'll tell me maybe there's no Aseh, but there's a kiyum aseh. But I don't understand. But you're supposed that I'm not sure if that's a way to go. I would assume that that there's a steer, and we have to do more work on this. But I think the Shin Beis is a very interesting thing. On the other hand, if my conclusion is correct, the same problem which I have over here, that the Ram says, Ochi Bemuna, Ochi, how would you read the Rambam in Perek Vav Hilchos Deis, Halacha Gimel? Mitzvah al kol Odom lehov es kol echod v'echod miYisrael kagufay. It's everyone. So I'm just not sure how you handle that. On the other hand, if you open up in Perek Vav of Hilchos Deis, you see, but he does the same thing in Halacha Hey. Kol Aseh echod miYisrael, and there's no rider. The amazing thing, the rider about the sinner is not in Hilchos Deis, but Hilchos Masech Shmiras HaNefesh. But here he says, Kol Aseh echod miYisrael, b'liboy ova lo yisaseh, shenem lo yisaseh chibur avecha. So it means anyone, but that's not true. So l'cheira, you have to say that it's written Shalom Diktuk, even though I don't like to say that, but I don't know how to read Hilchos Deis in the Mitzvah sisters of Chikil B'Avecha. So it's a very interesting question, but I think that the quotation in Minyan HaMitzvos in Shin Beis, and also that the basic argument that he has to claim there's a Bikuach Nefesh involved in order to bring in the Priku Te'ina, if that's correct, so then there's a stira between whenever there's a mitzvah to be saying someone, there's no ve'after la'cha k'moch, which would be very interesting. Now, let's continue. Now, just a reading, okay? How do you read this? Hichetzivonu lahov kitzasenu es kitzasenu. Kamo shenav atzmeinu. Okay, we'll get to that in Mitzvah Hashem. Okay. Ushetiye chemlosi ve'avosi li'ochi ki chemlosi ve'avosi li'atzmi b'moinoi u'b'gufay. So I asked myself a question. Is the Rambam saying over here that besides the ahavo, where it's kmo shenav atzmeinu, I need also ahavo chemel la'ochi ki chemlosi ve'avosi li'atzmi b'moinoi b'gufay? Besides being double talk, because he says la'atzmi, and la'atzmi, atzmi. So, you know, what exactly is happening over here? The words don't read. So now another point, okay? From an Arabic point of view, okay? The vav achibur in Arabic, in other words, the word which is normally translated as and, in Arabic can sometimes be not an addition to something, but an explanation of something. And I think that's what's happening over here. we're explaining this emotional love is expressed by my want and love. How is this love and chemla and love, the endearment to my friend, okay, to my achi be'emuna b'das kechemlosi la'atzmi b'mamoni u'v'gufa. B'mamona u'v'gufa. It's expressed by chemlo and ahava to his mammon and his physical being. And what does that mean? V'chol ma sheyiyeh b'rishusai o yirtzei. This is the translation of it is very poor. V'chol ma she'ertzei la'atzmi. Doesn't make any sense. So here, kapach has a better translation, I think. Hold everything. Yeah. V'chol ma. No. Yes, I'll read this here. I'll read it here like this. The kappa goes like this. Yeah, I think this could read at least. Okay, so that's good. Anything that he has or he wants, Ma she'ertze la'atzmi, ertze loy kamohu. Anything that I want for myself, I would want for him. V'chol ma shelo ertze la'atzmi, o liyididi, lo ertze lo kamohu. In other words, I gauge my wants for him with what I'd want for myself. But it's not like it's a choice between him and me. I you know what they call in Yiddish vagin. Whatever I want for myself, I want for him. I'm not taking anything away from myself. So there's something odd over here, but in the sentence before, so that's this, the rotzoin is a shurim in the ahava, okay? My ava is not that I have an emotional love for my friend like I have for my wife or whatever it is, but it's that I want the emotional attachment should express, the love expresses that I want for my friend what I'd want for myself, and what I wouldn't want for myself, I don't want for my friend. Okay? And this is expressed now. You see, it's bimamonai, v'gufai, v'chol ma sheyesh loi. And anything, I'm not sure why v'chol ma sheyesh loi is not mamonoi. Mamonoi means money, and this is his possessions. Oh, shu chofetz, anything that he has or wants. Mammon, or is defined by actual mammon, I assume, or it's a very strange, it's like a parenthetical remark. V'chol ma sheyesh loi, oh shu chofetz, I'd explain that's more of an explanation of mammon. I'm not sure exactly how to read it, but I don't think there's a different way to read it. Okay, now, that I think is what he's saying. So there's a very important thing over here that we're able to explain the mitzvah by my want, for what I want for my physical self, or my mammon, or my possessions, I want him to have also. It doesn't mean that I go out to give it to him, and I take over my things to give to him, but I want him to have what I want for myself. Now, the Ramban, I think, is disagreeing with the Rambam. And let me read it. The Ramban in Parshas Kedoshim Vayikra Yutes Yud Zayin v'tam la'ahavta lira'ach kamocha hafloga. It's hyperbole. The Rambam is saying it's not hyperbole. It is kamocha, but in a certain venue. In the venue of my wants for him is what I want for myself. And the Ramban starts off and says hafloga. It's hyperbole. Ki lo yikabel levo odem shel v'schaveu kabos as nafshay. V'od shekvar omer bo Rabbi Akiva v'lo metchayecha koidmen l'chayei chavercha. It's true when it's one against the other, but when it's not one against the other, Ram says nothing to do with anything. Then he continues, says, "El mitzvas hatera sheyav chaveroi b'chol inyan kashe yav es nafshay b'chol hatera." I want him to have the best. V'im yiyeh ohavoi b'kol yachbosh yiske re'eu ohov loi ba'isher b'nechosim b'kovod u'b'dasa b'chochma. I want him to have all areas of knowledge and wealth and whatever. I want him to be, like you have a portfolio. It's not one thing, it's everything. V'lo sheyish ve'elov. Just the opposite of the Rambam. He shouldn't be the same as me. Avo yiyeh chofetz b'libo la'olam she'yu hu yoisem imeno b'chol teva. I have the right to want that I'm better, but I want him to be in good shape, but I want to be the best. That's what the Ramban's explaining it. I don't think that I'm saying that. Because there's no stira. He can be the best and I can be the best. V'yitzav ha'kosev shelo tiyeh pchisus hakina hazeis b'liboy. So, but the pasuk is afraid that even if the guy has something, not that he's reached where I am, but he's on it. He has something. I should forgive him, but that I should be. He should be the same as me. No, that's not what the Torah is talking about. So I think the Rambam has a whole different explanation over here, and is assuming that I should want for him what I want for myself. Now, before we go on, I'm just getting warmed up. I don't think this is going to be another week, but I think the principle, I think this thing is interesting. Let's say that I'm a sadist or a masochist. Okay. Does that mean that I can act in ואהבת לרעך כמוך? Let's say I'm a masochist, okay? If I'm a masochist, that means I can be a sadist? Because this is what I want for myself. I want pain. Okay? ואהבת לרעך כמוך. So the truth is, the Medrash Rabbah seems to say that that's the case. There's a Medrash Rabbah, and it's mamash mufurish. Listen to this Medrash Rabbah. It's an amazing Medrash Rabbah. In Reishis Rabbah, Pasha Chav Dalet Siman Zayin. Ben Azai Oime, Ze Sefer told this Odom. Ze Klal Godol Batera. Rebbe Akiva Oime, ואהבת לרעך כמוך. זה כלל גודל בתורה. שלא יתאמר. הואיל ונסבזיסי, יסבז חבריי. It's also Teres Kohanim. Chaveri ime. If I am a masochist, maybe I should act to my friend like that. Or if okay. However, this kalalti, yiskal chaveri ime. Or I'm not sure if he's talking about what happens to me, or since I'm in the situation. Omav tadchuna im osake im osisa kain da lemiato mavaze b'demus elokim osa isa. Well, the term is zeh sefer told us Adam b'demus elokim osa isa. It's saying there's a new rule that even if I'm a masochist, I can't be a sadist. Even though after Ben Aseh's klal is greater than Rabbi Akiva's klal. The klal Gola Batera would not have the klal, Rabbi Akiva's klal would allow a masochist to act as a sadist. Comes Ben Aseh and says that there's a selam elokim, a demus elokim. When I'm mevazeh, my fellow man, I'm mevazeh the Rebbeinu Shalom. Because it's the mus elokim in each individual. Okay? That's where the Medrash and Teres Kohanim take this, okay? I'm just wondering, you don't see an expression in Rambam about this and what's going on. Is there a din of Sel Elokim? What's happening? So I'm just wondering, maybe the Rambam's opinion is that we don't evaluate what I want for myself and what I want for my friend in pure individual terms, but it depends on Reva Alma, and that Reva Alma would want X for themselves, and assuming that the Reva Alma or the Reva Alma, maybe today is different, but Reva Alma from my Bereshis until Mashiach are not masochists. So I will mechuyev ואהבת לרעך כמוך under all circumstances. And maybe that's Rabbi Akiva's opinion. They didn't fall off from this. It's only Ben Aseh that seems to learn this, maybe. So that's another point. Okay, now let's move ahead. The question is, where does this definition come from? Why would the Rambam have said that the definition of ואהבת לרעך כמוך depends upon my desires for myself, or that which I find abhorrent, I wouldn't want it for my friend? Okay? So I have some ideas here. The Tosefta in Sanhedrin, Perek Tes Halacha Aleph, and the Talmud Bavli in many places, one of them is Psochim Ayin Hey Omen Aleph. It says that Bro Loi Misa Yofa. You should choose a Misa which is not very painful when you're giving Misa's Bezdin. The Rambam in Pirush Mishnayis, Psila Dovo Mutoch Me'achas Hamatres. It's something. It's one of the Psila means a type of metal. Vehem hoyu sofim be'eva mutoch. Lefi shesrefa pnimius haguf niklas srefa. V'kach bo b'kabola b'bnei Aaron shlo nifutz chitzonius gufom v'oma Hashem bohem yivku es hasrefa v'yasinu es zeh chemla ala odom mipnei shezeh mimayes misasar. Oma Hashem ve'ahavta lira'ach kamocha. Ram Pirush Mishnayis. Kshem she'odom im nischayev misa hoye boiche li'atzmoi hamovis hachi kal v'asher inyonoi poches kach naaseh bezulosenu in nischayev skilo yisoka be'eben achas kamo shekodam. So it means Chazal are interpreting in Brolo Misa Yofa that what I want for myself, I should want for my friend. What I want, if I was in a situation, that's what I would want. And you find similar, Mashe Esneloi, La'atzmi, you find in the Gemara Shabbos Lamed Aleph Lamed Aleph Omar loy di aloch soni lechavcho loy sabid zu hi kol haTorah kula v'idach pirusha zil Gemara. It's expressing this thing, what I would want. The ve'ahavta lira'ach kamocha is what I'd want for myself, or what I wouldn't want for myself, I don't want for him. The Gemara Kiddushin, Mem Aleph Omen Aleph. The Omer of Huna, the Omer of Yehuda Marav, Osel Olam Shekalish Isha Ad Shirena, Shem Yire Bo Dovo Maguna V'Ziskano Lo V'Achmon Omer ve'ahavta lira'ach kamocha. So I don't think the problem is that, maybe it will come to the point that, you won't like her because you never saw her before. That's not the issue here. Marrying someone without seeing them, the Mekudeshes, she wouldn't want to be in a situation, maybe she'd be exposed. That maybe he doesn't like me, let him see me and make a decision about it. So since if I would be in this situation, if I would be a girl, I wouldn't want this to happen to me. So ve'ahavta lira'ach kamocha says that since I don't want it to happen to me, I shouldn't do it to somebody else. And that's the Aseh l'kadish Adam ad shirena, and that's the Tosefta in Sefer Perek Halacha Yud Aleph. Hoyer me oime hanesi isha she'eno igenes loy or mishum chamisha lavim mishum bal tokum u bal tito bal tisa zechicha b'lavecha ve'ahavta lira'ach kamocha. Because I wouldn't want. It's not because there's going to be sinner in the future, but the etzem nesuin. that has such an option. I wouldn't want something that's maguna. I wouldn't want it to happen to me, so I shouldn't do it to somebody else. So I would say these are the makeres for the idea of that what I would want for myself, I should want for others. Okay, now, we still are just at the beginning over here. So, but what we have so far is that the mitzvah is the emotional love defined or expressed. It's you're supposed to love, but the love is that I want for myself, because I love, that's my love, my empathy, whatever it is. I want for him what I want for myself. Now, let's try to understand we know the question is the Isa say, a bittul say, okay, we were talking about lira'ch kemוך, okay? So the Rambam Matnas Aniyim, when he talks about Piyud Shivuyim, he talks about a bittul say. If he doesn't do Piyud Shivuyim, ubitul mitzvahs pasorech tivchas yodecholoi, yodcholoi mitzvahs b'chayich imoch, ve'ahavta lira'ch kemוך. So maybe it's only a bittul say. However, if you remember, the Isa to marry someone before seeing them, or the Isa of Eino Higenis, so there's an Isa say. So the question is, when is there actually Isa say, and when is there a when is there only a bittul say? So I would say maybe, and we'll have to think about this, in the case of Piyud Shivuyim, it's just Shevi al Taseh. But if I do something that is a situation that I certainly wouldn't want for myself, that might be an Isa. We have to see if that's correct. Now, let's just set up for next time when we'll go over. Okay, we're still okay. The question is, since in the beginning of Shorish Chi, the Ram has basically classes of mitzvahs of deos, midos, pu'ulos, and amira, and ve'ahavta lira'ch kemוך is basically midos. I'm using the character traits of friendship in order to develop love. Okay. So are the situations of the mitzvah of ve'ahavta lira'ch kemוך of pu'ulos? For example, we found in Shorish Sheni, the Ram says that's ve'ahavta lira'ch kemוך b'kacholim in all these cases. He has it in Perek Yud Daled v'chos over l'cha'alef. So what's the relationship if the mitzvah is midos? What's the relationship to the pu'ulos? Kol advorim in Perek Yud Daled v'chos over l'cha'alef. Kol advorim she'ata roitze she'asu oisoch l'cho acherim aseh ata oischa oison lochicha b'torah mitzvos. In Shorish Beis, v'lo yodu shekol ha'pu'ulos halol v'domeim nichnosas tachas mitzvah achas Michlal HaMitzvos HaKsuvos B'Torah. V'be'avu Omer Yisrael V'ahavta Lir'ach Kamocha. So Mitzvah Hashem, we'll pick this up next week.